going on, Internet? I'm Christopher Peterson, and you're listening to a Nerdy XP interview. Today I have the pleasure of hanging out with Greg Kasavin, who did the writing and design for Bastion and Transistor.
Hey, how's it going?
Doing well. Thanks for being here, answering a few questions. So I guess just jumping right in, and this is kind of probably a big one, what do you think the key to Bastion's success is? Like, why did it resonate with fans so much? Why was it such a critical hit?
Yeah, it's a great, it's a great and mysterious question. I think my response to this can perhaps reek a little bit of false modesty, but I assure you, I'm sincere in thinking that luck did have a fair amount to do with the game's success. I think that some games just happen to be in the right place at the right time. And for sure, some of Bastion's success is due to that. I think it just kind of happened. It had like a clear runway or whatever when it came out originally in the summer of 2011. And that just really, it just kind of took off from there. But I think, beyond the fact that we got lucky and we were a small team of 7 people and, no one got sick or anything like that. Like the production of the game, apart from people kind of working their butts off or whatever, but people do that, I think, on many, if not most games. The way that we approached the development of that game was really important to us. It was our first game as a studio, and our team was really configured around like the way that we worked much more than the kind of game that we were going to make. Like Supergiant didn't even have a name, and Bastion was just kind of like an initial idea when the studio first started. But the feelings about how we would make games were very strong, because we had come from working at like Electronic Arts and stuff like that, and had been in these big team environments, and just really wanted to work in an environment where the people doing the work just kind of determined how they would do that work and what they would even do and so on. So it was really validating toward our whole development process, and because the game just contains like all the stuff that we care about as game players and game developers, and thankfully it did resonate, and we certainly don't take that for granted, but never in our wildest imaginations could we have foreseen that like the game has sold more than 3 million copies now, which is insane to us. That's like better than the games that we made at Electronic Arts and so on, at least some of them. So that's you can't sort of manufacture that level of success as a small team, and I think we would be foolish to think that we somehow had it all figured out and just now we have this formula that we can easily reproduce. So that's a long answer.
No, that's a great answer. Definitely want as much insight into the process from your standpoint, kind of being a success story with Bastion under your belt and then Transistor as well. Do you think some of the high sale numbers were because I think indies, that terminology, but those smaller games were kind of coming into their own in 2011, and now they're just they're every week and they're more modern. You just see them constantly. But I feel like kind of back then it was still new. It was still kind of feeling its way out and kind of growing.
Yeah, I mean there was some like it's funny because from our perspective, like we were definitely already like following in a tradition, because we were back in our EA days we were playing these games like Braid and Castle Crashers and Plants vs Zombies were like those are the main ones at the time back in 2009 or so, where we're like, wow, it's crazy what small teams of people are capable of these days, and these games are they're so well made and they're so kind of pure in what they are, and they have so much personality, and I think all of us were really like just kind of enamored of that stuff. So from our point of view, we were really like following in the footsteps of games that have come before us, and yet, yeah, now you look at it, and our studio, which has been around for, I guess it'll be in September it'll be 5 years, but 4.5 years or something. It's like, yeah, it's a long time in the realm of independent games, and a lot has changed and evolved in that time. And I do think it's a lot more. There are a lot more studios out there now doing this thing. Like a big shift has happened in that time period, and many bigger studios have shut down, and many smaller studios have come up, and like the quality bar for the kind of stuff that smaller studios are putting out, as you suggested, it just kind of keeps going higher and higher. And I think a lot of it is, the whole business has sort of changed, and a lot of it is like for us, definitely when we were starting, it was the advent of digital distribution as like a real thing. Suddenly you didn't need to like put your game in, like Walmart and Target or whatever in order for anyone to be able to play it. You could just, get it onto Xbox Live Arcade or Steam or something like that. So the actual publishing process became more accessible to developers. So on the one hand, it's like more competitive than ever before, but on the other hand, the barrier to entry is lower than ever before, which is really great. It means that a lot more people can just go and attempt to make games, whereas in the past they might not have been able to at all. And it's still very, very difficult, I think, and still inaccessible to a lot of people who would probably really like to do it. But I think it's gotten a lot better in that regard.
For Supergiant Games, kind of going forward, MK1982 from MyAGN wants to know: Does the success of Bastion come with a price? The success of Transistor, like, do you feel like you have a high standard of excellence that do you guys ever kind of worry internally of keeping that going?
I mean, like certainly while working on Transistor, like when we were working on Bastion, it was like fully in that mode. It was fully in this mode of like, if we fail, we'll just sort of pass into history, whatever. No one will ever know that we existed, and we'll just kind of go out of business and go try to find new jobs somewhere else or whatever. But we did see it as our one big chance to kind of do something that really felt personal to us and like felt really meaningful to us in a way that even stuff we'd worked on in the past, it just wasn't quite the same. And there was a difference with Transistor in the sense that like people in light of Bastion being, like well regarded, at least by some people, we had expectations to live up to for the first time. And that was something we were certainly conscious of, but I think the sort of the pressure that brought was purely positive. Like it's a really good, it's like a really great feeling to be working on something that people just want to be good, and to try to like live up to that, whatever that is. Because I've been on the other side of it. I've worked on games before where the audience like didn't want them to be made, where your posture toward the community is like really antagonistic, where they're like, why are you even doing, this sucks. Like they don't even like it. Whereas with Transistor, from the moment we announced that game, there was just a ton of excitement. And that is like, on the one hand, there's pressure with that, but on the other hand, it's incredibly motivating in a great way. And we have, I mean, but I think like most of our motivation for the people on the team, I think like most of our motivation kind of comes from within anyway. It's like, this is stuff that we just really care about, and we have our own weird particular standards for it. So overall, I feel like things our kind of mindset toward this stuff is the same as ever, because like I said, it's that mindset that was core to our studio. And that's really what we want to hang on to. And it's the same team, it's the same 7 people plus several others, still working together. And that's our kind of, relatively modest end goal, is we just want to stick together and keep making stuff in the way, kind of in the same methodology that we've been able to in the past.
I mean, so far everything that you guys have done is great, and I feel like it resonates
Thanks.
with fans, and you guys are doing a good job. As the writer, what comes first, the gameplay or the story?
Yeah, much easier answer. The gameplay comes first for us. It's really as simple as that. I think despite how it may look from playing our games, we consider ourselves very much a gameplay driven studio first and foremost. The narrative aspect, like the narrative experience of our games, is extremely important to us as well. But we are in the business of making games, and if all we wanted to do was like create stories, there are like more optimal ways of doing that than trying to put them in video games. There's a we're like super fascinated in the unique ways in which games can deliver like narrative experiences. So we're really interested in storytelling using means that are only possible in games, as opposed to just like whatever cinematic cutscenes, or just kind of writing for its lots of written writing or something like that. So we're always looking for opportunities to like sort of create harmony between the narrative and the gameplay aspect, but and it's also very a symbiotic process all through development. But in the end, like when you're talking about that kind of inception point of when the idea for the stuff first forms, for us it's always been about like what the play experience will be first and foremost, and then what is a story that can like synergize with that really well and kind of support that, as opposed to like, here's this great idea for a story, how do we like back solve gameplay into it.
Death by Jazz Hands on Twitter wants to know, what was the process like working with a voice actor for a story that was so context sensitive with Bastion?
Yeah, the process was having Logan Cunningham, who's the voice of the narrator in Bastion, and also the voice of the Transistor in Transistor, just working with him an awful lot. We just record with him a lot, and he's the only, like, if we didn't know him, we wouldn't have even had voiceover in Bastion. Like, it was made possible because of not just because of him personally, being a close friend of Darren, our audio director, and Amir, our studio director. And Logan was like roommates with Darren for about half of Bastion's development. So, as I mentioned before, we're a very small team, and when you're a small team, totally unheard of, making your first game, everything is stacked against you. You're more than likely to fail, statistically. So all you could do to keep from like being in a totally despairing mindset is to think about like, well, what advantages do you have, if any? And one of our advantages was like, well, our audio director is roommates with a dude who has like a pretty cool voice, and we think he's a really good actor. So let's just go crazy with that. Let's record with him as often as it takes and iterate really, really heavily. And that was kind of it. Like, we just did a lot of writing and recording, where even on, big like AAA productions, they'll record maybe have like 3 or 4 really big voice recording sessions during development, whereas we were recording like multiple times a week, and just going back and redoing stuff until we felt it was just right. And that's what I think that it really has a lot to do with how well it turned out, is just because we iterated on it a lot and, added stuff, cut stuff, redid stuff, kind of tested it over and over to make sure it just felt quite just right as much as possible. And it was something that we were working on basically all through the production of both our games. And Logan has just always been just awesome to work with, and really, we consider him part of the team, because he's not just providing like providing the voiceover, but he's often like, he's just like playing the stuff when like picking lines out for himself that he kind of wants to go and do over and get just right, and that sort of thing.
For Bastion and Transistor, is there a connection? I saw a fan theory that the process caused the calamity.
Yeah, that's a fun theory. I mean, there's like I think there is like no there is no like overt, clear stated connection, right? There's like they're not like sort of as far as anyone can tell, they're not related. Like it's not Bastion 2, right? It's Transistor, and during development, like um, it was very important to us first and foremost that Transistor have its own distinct identity as a game. That was like our main goal, is just to make something new that had its own distinct feel that could be hopefully just as strong of a feel in its own right as what we were able to do with Bastion. And at the same time, we're the same people who made it, and a lot of the things that there's some parallels that people have found, that I think are cool. And I think like since being a smaller team, it's probably more like and this is I forgive this like snooty analogy for a second, but it's like when a band whatever produces like a second album, there's like some aspects are going to be similar and some aspects could be seen as like a callback to the previous work, and you could still feel that the same group of people did both, even if they have their own stuff going on. So yeah, I mean, but no, there's no point in Transistor where like unequivocally it's like, and then you're in Caelondia. It's not like a BioShock Infinite thing or something like that. But I love reading like Transistor in a lot of ways is like a pretty open-ended game, and it's awesome to see people interpret it in different ways, including things like that.
I know you say it's open-ended, and I agree with that. Those are very story-focused games. I think that they finish their story, but fans always keep asking, will there be a sequel, or would you guys be more likely to keep doing new IPs going forward?
Yeah, I honestly have no idea. Like, the nice thing about being small like we are, one of the nice things is that we don't have to like plan too far ahead, and we also see ourselves as being I think not a day goes by that I don't kind of count my blessings about this, but I think very few studios, large or small, are in a position where they can just kind of go do what they want with their next thing. And I think thus far we've been able to configure ourselves that way, whereas like it probably made a lot of like sort of from like a raw whatever mercenary business standpoint, it probably would have made a ton of sense for us to just go make Bastion 2, and those things like often do better than the previous thing, instead of Transistor. But like we wanted to go and make Transistor, so that's what we did. And I think for us to kind of follow our hearts with that stuff is going to be the most important thing. We don't, as we work on these games, we do like fall in love with the worlds of them, and we design the worlds to be deep enough to where they could support any number of different stories. But we also design the stories to be complete and don't approach them as like, this is the first of a trilogy or whatever. It's like every game we work on, it ought to feel like, if this is the last game we ever make, it's fine. It's going to provide a sense of closure. I think that's really important to us. But that doesn't mean, like I said, I don't know what the future, like I never would have guessed that Bastion would come to the PlayStation 4 or something like that, which it did like just a couple of days ago. So it's nice to not have to plan that far ahead and be able to surprise ourselves when it comes to those kind of decisions and just kind of see what happens. But I think for us, back to your first question of like why was Bastion even successful? I think another big part of that in my mind is that it surprised people. Like I don't think people knew what to expect from it really, and it went to some places that they didn't expect. And preserving that element of surprise, I think, will be challenging for us over time. Will continue to be a challenge and will force us to like push our own selves out of our comfort zone, whatever that means, and keep doing stuff that that feels fresh, to us and hopefully to people who play our games as well, whatever that may be. And if I knew exactly what that stuff was, I think by definition it would not be what I'm describing. So yeah, I think we just need to keep doing the thing that is like the most creatively challenging for whatever it is that we can do. Whatever form that take.
You mentioned Bastion coming to PS4, which is 10% off its first week if people pick it up by Tuesday. What is there? Is this the definitive edition of Bastion? Are there Easter eggs that people who have played should give it another go?
No, we didn't. The content of the game is like if for folks who've played the game on other platforms, the content is essentially the same. Like we didn't consider for very long the idea of adding things like what you said. It didn't feel appropriate for this game because again, it was designed very much with like sort of completeness in mind. So in the case of this game, the idea of like adding like an exclusive weapon or something like that, it felt like sort of dishonest or something. It just seemed inappropriate. Like the main reason we wanted to make this version is because it's the first time Bastion is on a PlayStation device like at all, and so interestingly for us at least, for a lot of folks who are PlayStation owners, their first and only exposure to Supergiant is through Transistor. So to them, it's like a whole new game, which is really interesting because I think they, like again alluding to something you said, they have some kind of touchstones between each other, and hopefully it's interesting to play them kind of in either order. But we do hear from folks who are like, oh, I'm excited to play Bastion again, but like it's certainly not our assumption that people who've played it already like go and pick it up again. And yeah, there's nothing to like sort of, we don't want anyone to feel like they kind of have to get this version now because there's some new level or extended ending or something like that. I think if we, not that we would even do something like that, but if we did, I think we would like want to put it in the other versions of the game anyway. So yeah.
No, I can definitely appreciate that. I think as an industry, the entire games has kind of gone away from one game. Now there's hidden levels, secret characters, pre-order bonuses from different retailers that you can't even buy the full game if you want to.
Yeah, that stuff is weird. You get like paralyzed. At least I do, where I'm like, you just want the full game and you can't actually get it from any single source. So for someone like me, my only defense to that is just to like not care. I'm like, okay, I'm just going to pick one and forget all that other stuff and whatever. But that kind of feels bad. It feels bad to like feel like you're getting a somewhat incomplete version of a thing.
A couple questions more business side. You guys self-published Transistor.
Yep.
Do you think you'll continue down that road, or was that experience?
Yeah, no, it was great. We like on Bastion. So Bastion's published by Warner Brothers, and they were and have continued to be awesome to work with on that game. And that's like, and a big part of that is that that relationship like started from the right place right from the start, where Bastion, just like Transistor, was self-funded by us, and we really at the time we really needed a publisher to get onto Xbox Live Arcade, which was like a big place we wanted to be with that game. I mentioned games like Braid and Castle Crashers that were like spiritual inspirations for us, and that's where those games started. So we wanted to kind of follow in their footsteps. And you needed a publisher just to get there. And these days, it's somewhat more accessible on Steam or whatever. You can do it yourself. So some of the requirements around having a publisher are just different today than they were, 4 or 5 years ago. And so since we did kind of oversaw just about everything ourselves on Bastion. It just kind of seemed like the logical next step for us to give it a shot and see how it went. And I think it went. I think we were happy with. We really value our independence, as a small studio, that's kind of what we're in it for, is just to be able to do everything our own way, for better or for worse. So I think we've enjoyed that experience, but in the future, again, who knows? Like I can guess as much as anybody how the industry is going to continue to evolve. But if I knew exactly, I would be, I would be much wealthier, I think, right now, if anybody knew exactly how things are going to go. And I think publishers these days, they're evolving just as much as anybody else, and I'm sure they're going to continue to be valuable in a lot of cases. So yeah, so who knows? It's like those kind of decisions we defer on for as long as possible, because it's like tends to be a bad idea to like commit to things like that too early in the process, because you don't know where things are going to be after another couple of years. It may be just totally different what you need and how things are and so on.
2 games in, is there anything that seems really obvious now that you kind of feel like you should have known when you first started?
I wish. It's, yeah, not really. I wish. It's weird. I've been like, prior to game development, I worked in the gaming press for like more than 10 years, but now it's getting close. Like, I've been in game development now for pretty, like, close to 8 years or something like that. So like a decent chunk of time. But I still feel like I'm learning this stuff every single day, and stuff that I feel like should be easy, because I've done it before. We've done this stuff. It should be easy. We have all this experience. We've worked together. We've solved these problems. It continues to be hard. And sometimes I get frustrated about that. And then the way I like loop back around and feel better about it is to realize, it's kind of back to the other thing I said of like, if it's not kind of creatively challenging and kind of at the edge of your understanding, then maybe you're kind of taking the easy way out on it. At least that's how I try to make peace with it. But yeah, it's still, I think, partly because the industry itself keeps changing, and like, things just never stay the same for too long to where you could really truly feel like you've kind of mastered it, and now there's all this stuff that you know how to do that's super easy. I mean, there's like, I'm sure there are a lot of like logistical things in answer to your question that like you can only learn through kind of taking the lumps through experience, but I can't even really think of examples of that off the top of my head. Yeah, it's still very much a learning process, day in and day out overall.
You mentioned coming from the editorial, the journalism side of it.
Yeah.
Kind of having that unique perspective. What are some of the major misconceptions that journalists have with developers, or that you yourself learned once you start getting your hands in there?
Man, I don't know. Like, I think I personally think that the misconceptions flow more in the other direction more frequently. Like, there are a lot of misconceptions among developers I've encountered about the media, and there's just like a lot of second guessing of like the media's whatever intentions or perspective, and it's like it's actually not that complicated. Like, what if they just wanted what they said that they wanted or whatever? There's no ulterior motive usually, and it's just like they're looking for good games that are exciting to them. That's kind of it's as simple as that at the heart of it. But I think among the gaming press, there's probably there were 2 things that were surprising to me, I guess. One was that just how much game developers like valued the gaming, like how much impact the gaming press had on developers. Like, I didn't realize that game developers cared as much about like game reviews as I realized they did. when I started working with more developers, I was like, whoa, this stuff really means a lot to you. I thought you guys didn't care. Like I was writing this stuff for game players. It's like the audience is the game player, not the game developer, and yet the developers cared a lot and valued the kind of feedback and the insight that a lot of reviews would bring. At least, again, in my personal experience. And then what was the other thing? Oh, the other thing is that like there is sometimes you read like a snarky review or whatever that's like, how could this game overlook this like boneheaded, how could they be so stupid or whatever to do, to like not let you rotate the camera with the bumpers or something, like I don't know what. I'm sure you've read reviews that are like that. And typically there's a reason for that. Like my experience is also that game developers like know exactly what it is that they put out there, and they are their own harshest critics. And I think they put their work out there, kind of hoping that the flaws that they see in it, that they've managed to kind of sweep as many of them under the rug as they could, and that the sum total experience sort of outshines whatever little rough edges there are. But developers are often, of the ones I've met, they're often very critical of their own work, even, at least as much, if not more so than the typical review. So they know what they're putting out there, and what the game critic, usually doesn't know is kind of the trials and tribulations that went into making the thing. And that shouldn't necessarily matter, depending on how the game is kind of being evaluated. But yeah, there's like, so there is often, I find that to be one of the most interesting sort of disconnects between, like, to take place in the game industry, where you have these like celebratory announcements of this game is shipped and it's sold 2 million copies or whatever, and then like a month later it's like the studio's been shut down and half the staff has been laid off, and it's like, man, what happened there? And sometimes if you dig deep, sometimes you could find a version of that story out there, but often that story is very private, and it's suggestive of how difficult it is to make a good game that is successful in all the ways it needs to be for the team to be able to keep going. So it's always been a tough business, but the people working in it, they really love it and try to make the most of it. So yeah, I think it's always interesting to see reporting on stories like that, I think.
What advice do you have for developers who are trying to break into the industry or get their game published?
I mean, it's really difficult to give like blanket. I don't. The older I get, the less inclined I am to give advice of any kind. I feel like I always try to respond to this type of question by framing it as like, here is my own experience, and if someone can find something of value in that, great. But in my case, I wanted to make games since I was a little kid, and I only got my start when I was like close to 30 years old, right? So if I knew everything about this stuff, I would have like been doing this a lot sooner. But I think today the big silver lining is again just how accessible the tools are, that sort of embracing the aspect that there is no formula to this, and anyone who sort of professes to give advice about how to do this, they're lying, or worse. Like nobody knows what the correct way of doing this stuff, what it is. And even if they did, it would be different in another 6 months. So, and it's an entire industry built by like people who like fundamentally just went and did things their own way. They dropped out of school, and instead of whatever majoring in computer science or something, they just went and made video games, and some of them got successful and others didn't, or whatever. That's like the foundation of the industry from way back when. And I think that kind of pioneering spirit still lives on. There's always successful developers who encounter their success, both by working very hard and also just doing things really, really differently, just kind of going their own way and trusting their own instincts. But yeah, I mean, the base, the thing that I would do if I was just getting started today is I would just try as hard as possible to just start making something. Pick a tool, Unity or Game Maker or something, and just try to learn it and just try to make something small. Because it's way more important to be able to finish something than just to like dream big and think of like a better version of World of Warcraft. But if you're never going to make that game, who cares? The ideas are relatively cheap, but being able to like make them real, that's the really hard part. So just go and learn and do stuff and meet, interact with people who've solved problems similar to the ones you're having, and whatever. One day maybe you get lucky. That's I think that's the best I've got as far as that. Like I said, that's what I would do personally. I'm sure there are other ways of going about it as well.
All right, completely random question.
Yeah.
What movie are you most looking forward to this year?
Oh man. Since I think my short answer to that is The Witness. I've already talked a bunch about Braid here, and Jonathan Blow has not made a game since Braid, and The Witness is going to be that game, and it just I think he is a brilliant designer, and that game is just like, it seems so ambitious and been in the works now for quite a long time that I'm just sort of like incredibly fascinated to see how it's going to turn out. Up until and also Bloodborne just came out a couple of weeks ago, so that was it's been an exciting month of March, April or so. Like a lot of stuff has come out. But yeah, in the meantime, I play a lot of Hearthstone lately to keep me busy. So I still play kind of all sorts of stuff all over the place. But my runner up for that is what's the full name of it? Part of the name is Obra Dinn, but the next game from Lucas Pope, who made Papers, Please, which I thought Papers, Please was just brilliant. I thought that game was just utterly amazing. So in a similar way to Braid into The Witness, Papers, Please into Obra Dinn, like whatever Lucas Pope does next, sign me up day one. I want to play whatever that is, and that game looks really, really interesting if you haven't seen it.
All right. Well, thank you. I definitely appreciate your time.
My pleasure.
Transistor is available for PS4, Steam, and Mac. And then Bastion is now available for PS4 and is also out there for 360, Steam, Mac, and iOS.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. And I hope you guys enjoyed this episode and that we helped you with your Supergiant Games IQ. Level up, friends.